was on the edge of a medical revolution. Dr. Elias Monroe, a brilliant but enigmatic virologist, had done the impossible. He had discovered a cure for HIV. Not just a treatment. A full, irreversible cure. He had spent decades in the shadows, tirelessly working, dissecting the virus, understanding its nature, and finally, after years of trials, he had cracked the code. His breakthrough wasn't just scientific, it was personal. His younger sister, Clara, had died from complications of AIDS when he was just 15. It haunted him, drove him, consumed him. And now, standing in the dimly lit lab, the final results in his shaking hands, he whispered, "Clara, I did it." Elias didn't waste time. He knew what this meant. He scheduled a global press conference, prepared his documentation, and reached out to a few trusted journalists. The world needed to know. Governments needed to know. Millions could be saved. The night before the big reveal, he recorded a video. In it, he detailed everything. His research, the mechanism of the cure, the names of people who had tried to silence him. He had been warned before. The pharmaceutical giants, the corporate overlords, they thrived on treatment, not cures. But Elias was ready. He encrypted the files, sent them to a few trusted colleagues, and then, exhausted, he went to bed. The next morning, he was gone. His apartment door was slightly ajar. His phone was on the nightstand, still showing the alarm that had gone off at 6 a.m. His laptop was open, the screen flickering, as if someone had tried to access his files. His car keys, wallet, and ID were all in their usual place. But there was no Elias Monroe. The press conference was never held. The journalists he had contacted received a chilling email from his address. "I was wrong. The cure doesn't work. Forget everything I said. Do not look for me." But they knew Elias. He wasn't the kind of man to give up. His closest friend, Dr. Naomi Patel, refused to believe it. She knew Elias had backups, knew he had planned for this. She dug into his files, tracing his last movements. His lab had been ransacked, but she found a single USB drive hidden inside the lining of his lab coat. It contained fragments of his research, but nothing concrete. Then, a breakthrough. A security camera near his apartment complex captured blurry footage. Two men in suits, dragging someone into a black SUV at 3:42 a.m. The footage was mysteriously erased from the system an hour later, but a neighbor had made a copy. The deeper Naomi dug, the darker the story became. Pharmaceutical companies had been funding research that intentionally avoided a cure. Billions were at stake. A lifetime of treatment was more profitable than a single cure. She reached out to journalists, but one by one, they backed away. Some refused to answer her calls. Others whispered that they had been warned. One reporter, Michael Graves, agreed to meet her in a secluded cafe. He looked exhausted, scared. "They killed him," he whispered. "Or they made him disappear. The government is involved. You need to stop, Naomi. Before you vanish too." But Naomi would not stop. Weeks later, a package arrived at her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a worn-out notebook, Elias's journal. Pages filled with formulas, handwritten notes, and a single post-it attached to the last page. "If you're reading this, I'm either dead or somewhere they can't find me. The cure exists. The formula is incomplete here, but you know where to find the rest. Trust no one. Keep fighting." Her hands trembled. She knew what he meant. And so, the hunt for Elias Monroe, and the cure for HIV, was far from over. Somewhere, in the shadows, the truth still waited to be uncovered.